What's up, my name's Kamal, and today I'm just gonna make a quick video on how to remove the rear differential in a 2004 Nissan 350Z, but it should be the same for any model year 350Z. So obviously, I have it on jack stands. And just a quick little side note, I don't have it in gear and don't have the e-brake on. If you spin your tire forward, if that one also moves forward, then that means you have limited slip differential. I think they call it the VLSD, I think. If you spin that one forward and that one doesn't move at all or spins the opposite way, spins in reverse, then that means you have an open differential. So I figured what I would do is just explain all of this. Don't really feel like filming me just taking all these bolts and stuff off because it's pretty simple and straightforward. I did remove my exhaust from the wide pipe back. Normally it's just right here. You can do this with your exhaust still up, but you just get a lot more room if you remove it. And you can see the other thing I have off is my, you can see over there, my W brace, which having that up I guess is kind of nice because when you remove the drive shaft it can rest on it, but I think it might be able to rest on the top of the Y pipe. So I'm over at the front of the diff now, and one of the first things you can do is remove the nuts and bolts from your drive shaft. These are 17 millimeters, the bolts and the nut. So you can just have a wrench and your socket and ratchet on the other side and break all these loose. If you're having trouble doing that, you can like either put the car in gear or just lock the e-brake and do it. And then you have your axles on both sides, obviously. These are 14 millimeters for both as well, the bolt and nut. And same thing, you can try to break these loose just with your wrench and ratchet and socket, but if you can't, you can just put the e-brake on and break them loose. The only thing with that is you kind of have to just, you know, it's a process of breaking what you can loose, going back to the car, releasing the e-brake so you can twist this, and then going back and putting the e-brake on again so you can get the rest of the nuts and bolts. So once you get those off, one of the next things is at the rear of the diff. That's your where your axles connect. You can see these like teeth wheels. There's one on each side, as well as these little sensors on each side, which are your wheel speed sensors. In a lot of cars, they might be out here, but for the Z, they put it over here with your diff. There's actually two ways you can do this. You have these 12 millimeter bolts that you can remove on either side, and then the sensor just comes right out. Or you can come back here. Here's both the lines for each sensor, left and right, and you can disconnect this connector. But disconnecting a connector isn't the only part. This side, the side that's actually connected to the sensors, it's like on your subframe. The way I do it is removing them here, just because this is plastic, and when trying to remove this, I just don't want to break it and then have this just hanging here. So just removing these 12 millimeters is just the safer option in my opinion. So after you have drive shaft, your axles loose, these sensors out, the next step would be to remove the bolts that actually hold the diff in. You have two ones in the front, which these are both 17 millimeters. Actually, this one back here is also 17 millimeter. But yeah, it's just those three, the one in the back and these two in the front. But there is one more thing still connected to the diff. It's kind of hard to see, but on the right side here, all the way up there. So on the right side of the diff here, you can see there's a little breather hose, and it has kind of one of those clamps that you might see on hoses in the engine, where you just have to squeeze from the left and right and move it back. And then that one part of the breather hose is metal, so you can just slide the rubber part off of that. That's gonna be the tricky part. After you remove this axle, you could try to take it off before doing these bolts and the one nut back here that actually hold the diff in place. But if you can't get it, you can remove all those three or two bolts and then the one nut that hold the diff in place. Have your jack positioned right here and start to lower it a little bit, and then that might give you a little more room to tackle getting that breather hose off. So as far as tightening torques, before I take this out, I'll just tell you everything in case someone's just wondering what all of those are. So the rear nut in here at the rear of the diff is 100 to 120 Newton meters or 74 to 88 foot-pounds. And then these two bolts that hold the front of the diff in place are 90 to 110 Newton meters or 67 to 81 foot-pounds. And then for your axles, it's going to be 63 to 79 Newton meters or 47 to 58 foot-pounds. And then these nuts and bolts for your drive shaft are 69 to 78 Newton meters or 51 to 57 foot-pounds. The only thing I don't have a tightening torque for is these small bolts that hold the wheel speed sensors in. I just removed the one on this side just to show you. It is, you can see, it's pretty small. So when you're snugging these down, don't go too crazy and break them off. But yeah, you can just snug those down. The only other thing I'll mention, I guess, is this sway bar back here. You have these 14s that hold it on each side. I guess that's one other thing, that if you're having trouble getting this out, lowering this down might just give you that little bit of extra room that you need if you're struggling trying to get this out. So I think that pretty much covers everything. If you have any questions, you can just leave a comment and I'll try to answer it as best as I can. I'm gonna actually start removing this, and when I get to that breather tube part, I can film that as well. I'll let you guys know if I can get it, because the clip's kind of at a weird angle. I guess I could get some needle nose pliers in there, maybe after removing the axle on this side. The only other option was to start lowering it a little bit in order to remove it. Yeah, I just want to point out quickly, I did mark my little yellow marker kind of the way that was oriented, so I can put it on the same way it came off. I just did the same thing with the axles, just made a yellow mark on there as well as on the axle itself, just so I can put them back the same way they were. To be honest, it probably doesn't really matter, but since I can, I just figured I would. I'm kind of OCD, but you know, if you think about if you swap to a different diff, then that kind of stuff doesn't matter. So if you don't do that, don't stress about it. Right there you can see one of the wires for the sensor that goes right there. I just tucked it up there. Same thing over here. Actually, you can see that one sitting right there. Just tuck them up out of the way so when we are moving the diff around to get this out, you don't accidentally bump it and crack it or something like that and mess it up. So there is more room up here now to get the that breather hose. So I'm gonna try to get that with my needle nose pliers, because I just figured if I can get it off now, that's better than trying to get it off while also balancing the diff. So I was able to get that hose off. I was able to kind of twist the clamp to the right and then pinch it and move it back. And then what I did was I just sprayed some silicone spray just all on the hose, and then I used a flathead screwdriver to push it off the metal part. You can see it right there. You can kind of see what I mean, how I twisted the clamp to the right because this metal part sticking up out of the diff kind of prevented me from squeezing it because it was facing straight down. That'll make this easier, removing it without having to worry about messing with that as well. Alright, so I just finished getting the diff out, but there was just a couple things I figured I'd mention. With the sway bar up in place, it was pretty tricky. I don't really know how anybody can get it out without removing the sway bar. Well, not really removing, but at least bringing it down like that, because, you know, back here, this stud, you know, you have to move the diff forward enough and then bring it down, and it was just kind of clumsy to do that, especially if this is all the way up there. And the only other thing I figured I'd show is this up here, because I know it was tricky to see earlier. Those little caps were on the top, and then those are the bolts that go underneath. They have a little rubber grommet on them as well. So those little metal caps go on top, and then the bolt with the disc and the grommet is what was underneath. Hope you found this helpful and informational. If you could like the video and subscribe to the channel, it helps me out and I appreciate it. In the link in the description, I'll put a separate video of me replacing these bushings. I'm actually replacing them with solid differential bushings. So I'll have a separate video for that if you guys want to check that out. And yeah, just thanks, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.